Ladies and gentlemen, let's Gaming.com video. I've got a question. Are both the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 already outdated? So this one is probably going to spark some controversy, but it's a question that's been asked by John Archer over at Forbes. No, he's not from Star Trek, he's from Forbes. And he starts off by saying, nothing makes me laugh more than the ongoing obsession with the Xbox One's difficulties rendering games at full 1080p resolution. However, he cites that just a little bit later on in the article that 4K is pretty much already here. If you were to mosey on over to Amazon or your favourite e-tailer and take a look at 4K televisions, there are some that are pretty cheap. For example, just looking at Amazon US, there are a number which are well under the $500 mark. Unfortunately, they're pretty much unsuitable for gaming because they've got a very low refresh rate. With that said, there are sets already available which have 4K, 60Hz above, and those suckers are like $1,000. Now, moving on from that, just for a second, there was actually another piece of news that I didn't bother to cover. It was kind of a smaller piece a while back. And pretty much they're making new panels, which are going to be drastically cheaper. And they're starting to come out with the technology. So basically what I'm saying is just like 1080p and even 720p panels when they very first came out, the price is going to start crashing pretty quickly over the next couple of years. So there's a good chance, if you're going to buy a television within, say, 2 to 3 years' time, there's a very good chance that you are going to most likely be purchasing a 4K model. In the UK, they're now starting to even appear on supermarket shelves, for the love of goodness. And that's saying something. You know, when you're walking in and you see a can of beans next to a 4K television, you know that they're becoming more and more normal. And on PCs, of course, ridiculously high resolution displays are normal as well. There's a problem with 1080p, and that is that if it's being displayed on these screens, you've got what's known as processing latency, because basically the television is trying to interpret that image and upscale it. That means extra latency in the image. That means that a game which already, of course, has, let's just, for example, say 33 ms of latency, not including input latency and so on, we're just talking about the latency between frames, it could become even more, depending obviously on the model of your television. Plus, the other problem is both systems are already having issues rendering true 1080p. Both the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 are pretty much maxed out. Yes, there is, of course, going to be optimizations and so on. And yes, definitely, we're going to be seeing situations where the games look increasingly better as the console generation goes on. But there's most likely going to be some resolution trade-offs or something in the future as well. In fact, Post Goodins, also known as Court from the ICE team / Naughty Dog, commented on exactly the same thing. He was asked, and he said, yeah, the consoles hardware-wise are already out of date, but it's down to the developers to pretty much get the most out of the hardware. Bear in mind, he works for Sony, and he was pretty upfront. He said, yep, the hardware's out of date now. And the post from Forbes continues. He says that even the Xbox One and PS4 creators know that 4K is a big deal. Ahead of each console launch last year, speakers for both Microsoft and Sony were falling over themselves to try and suggest their consoles could handle all sorts of 4K content, be it their interfaces, their streaming capabilities, or particularly their Blu-ray drives, but it's also gone very quiet since, and it seems there are huge hurdles of the consoles delivering all but the smallest of their 4K promises. Now, Sony has flat out said as much. Microsoft were also cagey about it. In fact, there was an unnamed Microsoft representative which told Polygon last year that Xbox One would be able to support native 1080p, 4K. And even Sony as well murmured stuff on this before the system's launch. So he continues by stating that pretty much the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 are feeling underpowered, or going to start feeling very underpowered in just a couple of years' time. Now, I'm going to say this is a PC gamer first and foremost, because there's a lot of different moving cogs right now in the IT world. If you were to look at games on the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, there are some that look pretty visually impressive, and we are still very early on in the generation. With that said, there are always going to be trade-offs, because the consoles, you know, they're pretty powerful, but honestly, I personally felt that when the Xbox 360 was launched, it was more of a jump than the PS2. It was further ahead, basically, than what the Xbox One or the PS4 feels. And I'm not just talking about the graphics. The actual machines themselves felt they just felt a little bit more, a bit meatier. There were issues with both of those consoles. For example, lack of RAM definitely held back both systems, but their CPUs, for example, particularly the PS3's, was extremely powerful. There is a very good argument, and this was actually made a couple of times, regarding PCs as well, and how that's going to fit into 4K. If we were to look at things very black and white, if you look at the Maxwell launch, which is just starting to come out, we're starting to see a few reviews and so on. The 970 is pretty cheap, the GTX 970, and even the 980 is pretty cheap in comparison to, say, the 780 Ti's and stuff. But it's not what I'd consider to be a leap in performance. It's not. I mean, you're still going to get slightly better performance in 4K than what you would have, but it's not like 4K is suddenly going to be obtainable with high levels of AA. It's pretty much what I'm saying. However, that's now, in the latter half of 2014. We know there's going to be another Maxwell iteration, and we know that, of course, NVIDIA are working on a couple of generations of GPU in the future. We know that AMD are working on their GPUs. My point being that performance and the hardware to maintain that level of performance in, say, 2-3 years' time, it's definitely going to be to the point where it's not going to be too bad to run 4K. I would imagine, anyway. One analyst, Michael Patchner, not that I always trust what he says, sometimes his opinions could be a little bit weird, but even he said, well, Microsoft are most likely going to start to push towards the PC and maybe even smart devices simply because of this very reason. Some analysts are even predicting the death of the consoles because, well, technology's moving on so quickly. People are questioning how long can really we have a fixed platform. I don't personally subscribe to that point of view. I can definitely understand Microsoft pushing towards PC. You can tell that just with their recent comments. They're trying to keep PC gamers sweet, and you can also see that they're pushing, say, DirectX and other APIs. But that said, I don't think we're going to get a situation where consoles are just going to fade away. I personally wouldn't be surprised, however, if we see this to be a fairly short console generation. The problem is, however, consoles are not cheap to produce. I've heard some, reading forums and so on, that, oh, within a couple of years we're going to hear rumours of the next generation consoles and so on. While Microsoft could probably afford to spring for it, the question is, would they want to so quickly? And with Sony, they're bleeding money quite badly. They're hemorrhaging it. So it's a really weird situation to be in. On one hand, I completely agree that these consoles, with the advent of 4K, as well as other technologies such as virtual reality and so on, that are starting to push more into the home, it's going to be really difficult for these consoles to keep up. Now, definitely there's going to be a good market for them. However, in a couple of years' time, I've got to tell you, like, look at the performance of Maxwell, and it's not just Maxwell, any of the mid-range AMD GPUs now, you can easily see that they've got performance to spare. DDR4 is going to become a standard in PCs. In the next couple of years, it will be. Prices of DDR3, on the other hand, will start going up. DDR4 prices will go down. At the moment, it's prohibitively expensive. That's why I wouldn't really recommend people adopt DDR4 at the moment. But it's going to become cheaper over the next couple of years, definitely. And we know that even Intel said that they are embracing PC gamers. They know that we are the ones that are coughing up ridiculous amounts of money. And by the way, PC gaming is expanding very quickly because of these reasons as well. Now, I'm not saying this is doom and gloom for the PS4 and the Xbox One. I think it's going to have a pretty full and happy shelf life. But I also feel that there's going to be this is going to be a very odd cross-generation. Some, I believe it was even the Forbes article and a couple of other articles have actually cited that Sony and Microsoft should have waited 1 year or even 2 years, and then 4K, these consoles could have handled 4K quite happily. I don't know if I agree with that. You see, in 1 year's time, it's not going to make the GPU architecture for the consoles cheap enough to where they could, say, double the performance, which is really what they'd have to do, at least to go to 4K. It probably, to be honest, it would have to be at least 3 times, ideally, at least. As well as the additional RAM, of course, that 4K brings, because you can't just be like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to increase the GPU performance. It requires extra memory bandwidth, it requires extra RAM as a whole, and if we were just to look at the raw pixel count, 4K, you're getting, and this is roughly, just roughly rounding this up, about 8.3 million pixels. 1080p is just a smidge, a hair, a jot over around 2 million. So you can start seeing the massive discrepancy in GPU power. Therefore, I don't think if Sony and Microsoft had decided to wait a couple of years, it would really have been enough for them to plow in all the GPU performance that they would really need. You know, they'd need to put in GPUs of at least 4, 5, 6 T-flops, ideally. And they could do it. Obviously, they have the technology to do it, but it would have boosted the price of the consoles up. So even if the consoles had not released until say 2015-16, it would have pushed the price up a lot more than what most people would be happy to pay for the consoles. And then you're going to have a situation where they're basically competing price-wise against the PC. The other problem was, quite simply, people were getting sick and tired, both the developers and gamers, of the performance of consoles. The amount of RAM the systems had was tapped out. They really could not do any more tricks to get more out of the system. It was a case where they'd done everything. So what I personally think is that they made the right decision. I feel that maybe they should have increased the level of performance, particularly Microsoft, a little with both GPUs. I would have even Epic themselves. I think it was Tim Sweeney with the Good Samaritan demo. I've mentioned this a couple of times previously, but you can Google it. There are traces of it on their forums, though some of it has been deleted and stuff because they tried to backtrack. But they basically removed SVOGI because the console, that's a lighting technique, because the consoles just weren't as powerful as what they had predicted. And in fact, the Samaritan demo, which was used on like a heavily modded version of UE3 engine, Unreal Engine 3, that was using 2.5 T-flops, and that's what they'd hoped that the next generation consoles would actually put out. Both systems they'd hoped would be around that, you know, give or take a couple of G-flops. For example, you know, 2.3 to 2.7 would have been the ideal range, I guess. But of course, that's just not really feasible with the level of technology that we've ended up having. And I'm not saying that either console is bad, because the games on them rock. I love my Xbox One, I love my PlayStation 4. I think, you know, I love PC gaming as well. I don't really have I personally prefer PC gaming for a lot of stuff, just because I prefer the controls, and I prefer the slightly improved graphics, and I personally prefer the price point and stuff. I just think it works better for me. Plus as well, I'm usually sitting at my desk anyway, so it's just, if I'm like, oh okay, I need to play Titanfall for like 15 minutes while I'm, you know, waiting for something, I can do that. I can just double click on an icon, and for me it's just more convenient. So what I'm basically saying, with the Xbox One, when it was released, the Xbox 360, when it was released around the time of 720p. So most of the launch games, you know, around that point, there were actually some that weren't even 720p at launch, simply because the titles were rushed. Basically, they didn't have time to optimize them. I think Perfect Dark is one of them, and there are a couple of others. But there are some games that are 720p, some which are like 600p or whatever. But for the most part, most of the games at the console's launch were 720p. Then, of course, a little afterwards, 1080p came to like the norm. But if you were to look, you can Google list of console resolutions or like Xbox 360 game resolutions and something like that, but derivatives thereof. You can see that some games are like 1024 by like 600, just for example. In other words, they're not true 1080p or 720p. Now there are some games which definitely are 720p or 1080p. In fact, there are some games which are 1080p on both the PS3 and the Xbox 360. But unfortunately, those are few and far between, because obviously it's such an increase in GPU performance from 720p to 1080p. It's quite steep. Basically speaking, what I'm saying to you is, I don't feel that the consoles are doomed. I'm not saying that we're screwed. I'm not saying the systems are bad. What I am saying is it's a very, very curious time in the tech industry. From 720p to 1080p, one can argue that it's pretty big, but 4K it's gonna be pretty huge, and I personally think it's gonna take off because it just doesn't make sense not to. Particularly when we're talking about the pixel density of larger screens, and people's screens are getting bigger. Let's face it, one of the whole purposes of consoles is you want that big screen experience. You know, you don't want to play on like a 20-inch screen in like your bedroom. The ideal situation of a console is you want the sucker hooked up to like just for example, a 50-inch screen, or bigger, preferably. Bigger is always better. I suppose technically you could hook it up to like a projector as well. I've never really tried projectors out, however, so I don't really know how excellent they are or how bad they are or whatever. I've seen them for like movies, of course, but never played consoles on one. Anyway, I am somewhat getting off the topic, as I tend to do. What some tech analysts are starting to point out, for example, like Megapactor, like this guy over at Forbes, and there are several other blogs and theories and developers and all of these that have said something about it or another, and it's definitely something that even Valve are kind of murmuring in the background. Now you're seeing PCs with the ability to stream very easily to the living room, and because PC hardware is going to become really cheap in a couple of years, one theory that a lot of analysts have is that, okay, people are just going to buy a high-end PC, or a comparative to now high-end PC, or a comparative to console high-end PC, and they don't cost that much. I mean, you could buy a really, quite a good system now for like, just for example, like £600, £700, £800, depending on what you're going for, and we're talking quite a lot of computing power there. That's, okay, it's a lot of cash up front, without a question. But especially if you're someone that's using PCs anyway, it doesn't really require that much. Let's say, for example, you're buying a new PC, or you're considering buying a new system, or you've already got a reasonably good base system. It's not that much more expensive to throw everything in. And I'm not turning this into a PC versus console. I'm just saying what some analysts believe, and then you can just simply stream it. And then you've got the advent of mobile technology as well. Some believe that within 3, 4, 5 years we're going to have consoles or mobile devices which are as powerful as the next generation consoles. It's not quite as, we're not to the point where Electronic Arts said, however. EA just recently, I can't remember the fellow's name, but anyway, I covered it on the channel, but it doesn't really matter what his name is anyway for this point. But he actually said that, well, he personally believes that, you know, the consoles, you know, the PS4 and the Xbox One and so on, are kind of in the neighborhood of the iPhone 6, which is just frankly ludicrous. You know, they stomp on the iPhone 6 from a great height. You know, they ruffle stomp it. It's frankly ludicrous. I've not looked at the you know, the raw G-flops of the processor or anything of the iPhone 6. As far as I'm aware, it's not available yet, and if so, please link it to me on Facebook, facebook.com/redgamertech. I've had a couple of spec sheets. Maybe I've not looked recently, but regardless anyway. And definitely, it's a fairly impressive piece of kit. I don't know how it stacks up to like a Tegra, Tegra K1, but even the Tegra K1, which is very powerful, but obviously that even the Tegra, as far as I'm aware, is using the Kepler architecture, so maybe the more power-efficient Maxwell architecture for the Tegra and the Shield, maybe we're going to get a more powerful Shield as well. And that will obviously be considerably more powerful, possibly, than even the Xbox 360 and PS3. It's a really weird time in the tech industry. We're at this point where there are so many different bloody APIs, so many different technology, cloud gaming, which I personally don't really think is going to be the future for a while, if I'm totally honest. And all of these different other technologies, all these consoles, God knows. I mean, we've even heard rumors that Nintendo are going to be releasing a really powerful system, but then I've also heard rumors that it's not going to be that much more powerful than the PS4 or the Xbox One. It's going to be comparable. Others say that it's going to stomp over the PS4 and Xbox One. Who the hell knows? And there's no dates whatsoever regarding it, and it's just really weird. I can honestly say that, you know, a couple of years ago, it was pretty obvious where the direction of technology, even the Xbox 360, I remember looking, I was like, okay, you could see, oh, okay, well, 4K, you know, 1080p TVs are coming out, but whatever. But right now, there's so many different transitory parts and so many different cogs, different APIs. The PC starting to move forward really fast. Mobile technology is just going absolutely crazy. We've got virtual reality from pretty much everyone. You know, every single person. And I've got to say, just my own personal opinion, and I know I'm really crap at actually reviewing stuff recently, it's just because I've just been working contracts and stuff, so it's really messed me up, if I'm totally honest. But I've been doing some like testing on Oculus Rift. I've actually got one, and I've got to say, like, I was really skeptical. I thought to myself, oh, I'm not going to like this. It's not going to make much difference. It's not going to be that great. It's going to suck. Maybe not quite that strong, but I did not think it was going to be particularly good, if I'm totally honest. I thought it was going to be, it's kind of cool at best. However, when I used it, when I was playing Half-Life and some other games on it, holy crap, I thought to myself, this is actually really cool. I would not like to play all my games on it, but some of them, they are really awesome. But the problem with virtual reality is, one, it requires a really hefty refresh rate to get the most out of it. And this is something that John Carmack spoke about. I can't remember which event it was, but it was one of them anyway. He spoke about it with, I believe it was Tim Sweeney and someone else. I don't remember who. But they had like a panel, and they were talking about like the future of gaming. And John even stated, you know what, the resolutions we've got now for virtual reality isn't enough. But that's a couple of problems. One, the GPUs aren't powerful enough, and two, the actual screen displays themselves, which go inside the helmets, they're not really good enough at the moment. So that's kind of something that's definitely going to be improved upon. And my point being, 4K displays, virtual reality, much more powerful PC technology, which the GPUs are going to be coming down. I don't necessarily, I don't think that right now 4K is realistic unless you're quite wealthy on PCs, but that's probably going to change with improvements in the architectures of the GPUs and so on. Particularly, you got to remember that, particularly if the PC is being somewhat held back by consoles, then there's no, okay, we're going to get a few extra effects and stuff, which is definitely going to make the games look better, and we're going to run at a faster frame rate, but then you've really got the resolution to play with. So that's one of the reasons that, of course, you've got more powerful GPUs, so there's always that. My point being, I don't completely agree with what the Forbes article. I don't think that the technology on the Xbox One or the PS4 is out of date already, because I don't think that 4K is prolific enough at the moment. But in 2 or 3 years' time, I think we can revisit this question. And yeah, I mean, at the moment, in a very strict sense, yes, the console's technology is out of date, but they've got a lot to optimize. So hardware-wise, yes, it's out of date, but there's still a lot more they can push. However, there's no way the GPUs could push to 4K. So in 2 to 3 years' time, what's going to happen in that world? Who in the hell knows? That is my question. Anyway, guys, it's been a bit of an odd video, but hopefully you've enjoyed it. I'll see you soon. Take care.